All right, so this is the third video for our little Pong game here, and this will be the last one I think for the game, and I think also the last video in general. I may make one or two more if you guys have questions, especially if there's some sort of common questions. I might throw another one or two quicker videos up about maybe how to do something. But anyway, this is probably the last one that you might want to watch for some ideas. I've shown you pretty much everything that you probably need in terms of the commands. Obviously, we haven't used everything, but this is part of the experiences, you guys playing around with it and, choosing some of these other things. We didn't do a whole lot with sound, but there's all kinds of things you can do with sound. And so on and so on. So there's plenty of other things to explore in the menus here. Um, anyway, so our game, where we last left it, here to remind us of where we are. So we've got our intro screen, which is good, and we've got this waiting mechanism that's saying I'm waiting until I hit the space bar to start the game. And then when I start, I'm trying to collect the banana, which I very quickly did right there. The banana gives me an extra life. And I'm hitting and hitting. If that ball bounces down to the bottom, I lose. I lose a life, and then when I get to okay, that was quick. If I get to the next level, the ball moves faster, and and I died there. So and I have a game over screen here at the end. So what else, right? And again, I'm sort of trying to put myself in your shoes and saying, all right, but this game is going pretty well so far. But what are some other things I might add to it, or some other types of things that you might want in your game? Um, so one thing that you might have a need to do or have a desire to do is have maybe objects kind of either falling or shooting across, maybe from left to right or from top to bottom, but sort of obstacles perhaps, coming at you or things like that. So it's a fairly common type of a thing to maybe have in a game. So I wanted to implement that for you uh, and see, give you some advice as to how you might use something like this. So something I'm going to add, let me get the game running again here. Let me stop it. Is to say maybe level 2, since level 1 seems kind of busy already. Level 2, maybe instead of doing the speed thing, um, something that would make level 2 harder, maybe I would make a level 3, I guess. I guess I could do that. Would maybe be to have maybe objects, sort of a penalty object that's sort of maybe shooting down the screen. And you could either say if it hits the ball, you lose a life or you lose some points or something. You could say if it hits the paddle, you lose, maybe the same idea. Um, Something like that, right? Might be kind of interesting to try to implement. So let's try that. So let's try to animate something, some character coming down the screen. I'll do it this way, um, and see if we can write the right code for that. All right. So since that's going to be a character in my story, I need to make a sprite for it. And again, either from the library or you can paint one of your own. Let's at least take a gander in the library and see if there kind of looks like there might be something that would be a reasonable sort of bad thing, I guess, right? Or something I'm trying to kind of avoid. Um, let's see. Ooh, cheesy poofs. Um, so what? Let's see. So something kind of dangerous. Even the dinosaur and the dragons look adorable, so they're not really all that dangerous. Maybe a ghost. Oh, this ghost is a little scarier looking. Oh, a ghoul. That looks somewhat somewhat more scary. Um, yeah, maybe. How about that? That's probably a reasonable thing. I'm not really seeing anything else here to inspire. Oh, maybe lightning bolt. Oh, that might actually be better, and that's maybe a better shape. All right, let's pick that. So I'm going to click on that guy. Um, so let me go to the costume here for a minute. So an idea that I might have would be to say, take the lightning bolt and sort of let it kind of fall, and then maybe, kind of repeat this sort of danger kind of thing. One thing I might say is that it looks awfully big right now. In fact, it kind of looks comically, perhaps a little too big. So if you come over here, I'm going to see if I can maybe shrink this a little bit. Now, I think there is, um, let's see, no, no, no. Mm. Oop, that just made two of them. Oh, here, this is what I wanted. Okay, so maybe I'll just sort of resize this a little bit and make it a little smaller. Maybe even a little smaller. I don't think I really want that, so sorry, I should have just clicked on it. That seems like maybe a more reasonable sized lightning bolt to use here. All right, so moral of story, you can just click on an object and do the usual sort of photoshopping types of things. All right, I'm pretty happy with my lightning bolt. It's called Lightning. That's a perfectly good name, so I'll stick with that name. And all right, so now I come back here to the script for the lightning bolt, and I want to say, well, what do I want this to do? So maybe I'll have this be level 2, only happen on level 2. So in terms of appearance and things like this, when I start the game, if I don't want this to be there, I'm going to hide it. So as usual, right? So that means when I start, it's not really going to be there. So that's probably good. If I'm going to say that this is a new feature for level 2, I only really want to do anything with it, or want to sort of start doing things when I receive the message for level 2. Again, this is in the last video I showed you about broadcasting messages. Another reason why it's good is that it helps you sort of more easily send a message or send the signal, oh, hey, we're on this level now, and everybody can be listening for it, including this new character, the lightning bolt. Okay, so when I start the game, it'll be invisible, and it won't really do anything until I get to level 2, at which point I want it to appear. And I have to kind of decide how I want it, what's the behavior I want. So I think what I might want to do is say, all right, I want to say perhaps I should do some randomness, because I probably sort of similar to the bananas from the last round. Oh gosh, which actually now that I'm thinking of it, I should have also probably shrunk this down a little bit too, right? The bananas were a little obscenely large, so okay, and probably a little bit, because it was way too easy to collect them, right? So, okay, there we go. But the lightning bolt, right? I need to say, what do I want this to do? So I'm going to make this on level 2 appear, and then maybe I should make it appear in a random location, kind of like I did with the bananas, right? And you could, instead of maybe making a random location, you could always pick the same location, like sort of the middle, and then maybe say it's going to move in a random direction. That might be kind of cool too. Maybe that's actually a better trick. So let's do that. So what am I going to say here? So I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to start it. I'm going to start it sort of, I want to kind of start it maybe in the middle, wherever that might be. So maybe an x coordinate of 0 and a y coordinate of maybe about 150. So 0 and 150. All right, so I'll start it in the middle of the screen every time. But I'm going to say, all right, how is it going to move, or what direction is it going to move in? Maybe I'll pick a at least somewhat random direction. And by that I mean I'll point it in some direction. But rather than always saying it's 90 or whatever it might be, let me use my random stuff again. So remember, that's in the math. The green is the math stuff. And here I can pick any random number between whatever range I might have in mind. And so if I remind myself, whoops. Oh, is this a little too high? Maybe this is a little too high. Oh, that's a little too high. So 150 is a little too high. So how about 120? It's still a little too high. How about 100? Okay. Um, so let's see. So what direction might I want it to be in? Well, what are the directions that are possible? I guess I would sort of want to allow it to maybe be um, in sort of any of the directions that would be sort of in general in this general neighborhood or this general vicinity. So what are those directions? So just remind yourself what the grid is. So pointing directly to the left is -90, and pointing directly to the right is +90. So I could say maybe anywhere between -90 and +90 is one way of describing it. I guess another way of looking at it is down is 180. So if I pointed it in the direction of 180, it would be facing down, which would mean, of course, it would move this way. Um, so so play around with this, right? We might not get exactly what we want the first time, but maybe I'll try between -90 and 90 and see what I get. So let's see. Right. Okay. So -90 to 90. I think unfortunately that's going to give me kind of more upward directions. So what I really want to do. All right. So the labeling here is a little awkward here. 90 would be directly to the right. Like 140 would be sort of more like this. 180 is down. 200 is this way. 250. So how about instead of doing -90 to 90, how about I say somewhere between 90 and I think 270 is a better way to describe to the left. Okay, so let me grab that and drop that in there. So let's test this and see. Okay, so it's going to go there and then randomly point in some direction. You can sort of see that, I think. Now, these are all sort of reasonable maybe directions for it to move, but I'm not quite sure what's happening. So let me maybe make it move each time so that at least I get a sense of where is it going. Well, let me say I'll move 20 steps each time. So let's try this again. Okay, so I'm not quite sure that that's doing exactly what we want. I don't think I quite have my range here correct. So let's try to make it smaller. So rather than doing this whole range, maybe I'm being a little too broad here. Down is 180, right? So, oh, I think that's why it's rotating oddly. Oh, okay. So I think pieces by default are facing to the right. So in fact, here, if I grab this, just to show us what this is doing, right? If I say always point to the right, well, that's sort of strange. I don't think it's moving at all, is it? Oh, okay, it moved to the right. Oh, okay, sorry, I was confused there. So it's not going to follow. All right, so I guess the issue is that it's not going to follow sort of directly in this direction. It's going to just sort of move. If I say point, if I say face to the right, it is facing to the right. It's not actually facing down. Okay, so this is a somewhat annoying feature of this. So how about instead I switch the costume and rotate it? So since that's sort of the default position, I think if I start with it like that, this might make a little more sense to say if it's pointing to in 90 degrees. Yeah, okay, so that seems better. So here, I'll make it larger so we can see it. Okay, so maybe that makes a little more sense. So I'll say, right, you're going to have to do what I just did a little bit, which is just to sort of play around with it and be like, wait, why the heck isn't this doing what I think it should do? So I mean, I'll say I did that on purpose, although I didn't. But play around with stuff. So let's see if this seems a little more reasonable now. Yeah, okay. So I think it's sort of more so facing the types of directions that we might expect. Now, I might not want it to shoot quite so far to the right or quite so far to the left. Um, and instead, maybe I always want to sort of make sure it eventually gets to the bottom of the screen, since I think I'm going to try to have it hit the bar. So maybe I'm a little bit broad here in saying 90 to 270. So 90 is here, 270 is this way. Maybe I should cut myself off a little bit here and say, okay, 180 is down. So how about, rather, that's a little bit too wide of a range there. So if 180 is down, how about I do maybe 140 to 220. So in other words, I take 180 and I subtract 40 and add 40. And that'll give me at least sort of a more downward. It'll just be sort of in this range. So let's see what that looks like, right? So these are maybe the range, a little more the range of the directions I want this to maybe go in, rather than having it be totally free to sort of move left and right. Okay, so point of story, right, is that what do I perhaps want to do now? So let me bring it back up to the top. I want to animate it. I want to say, all right, go to the top. That's 0, 100, and pick a direction, a somewhat random direction of somewhere sort of generally diagonal-ish from somewhere between here and about here-ish. And I want to animate it. I want to say, slide or glide. Now the glide command I think I showed you in the first video is not the best. It looks good, right? If I say glide now, a certain number of steps, or glide just what's going to happen is that as it's gliding, it's going to sort of go into kind of dummy mode, and by that I mean it's not really going to be detecting, like, am I hitting the paddle or things like this. So a safer way to try to make movement happen, sort of seamlessly, is to instead just advance steps. And you can do this in a loop. So if I do something like move 10 steps, well, we know that's going to sort of move it a little bit. And if I grab a loop here, I'll do a forever loop just to kind of show you it in action. If I try this, that's pretty good, I think, in terms of, let me start it again, right? I think that pretty accurately, captures the idea of these lightning bolts sort of shooting down. And that's pretty easy to do, right? So let me turn that off so it doesn't keep doing it. Right? Now, you might say, ooh, okay, you kind of got stuck here, right? I sort of did. I kind of got, the lightning bolt got stuck at the bottom there. So maybe I don't want to quite do this forever. Maybe instead, if I do, I want to maybe reset it to the top. So rather than, maybe I will actually keep it forever. So repeat until is actually not a bad thing to use here. So what is this that I might be doing here is I might say, all right, keep moving 10 steps, let's say, until what? And I say, well, I kind of think when I get to the bottom is a moment where I'd like to stop and maybe reset and go back to the beginning. So one way of doing that is to say, all right, well, if I want to say this portion is maybe going to be repeated, it's not going to let me pull that apart, is it? If I actually drop these guys in here, let's see how we might interpret this. So this is going to say, keep doing this of going to the top and moving, right? And picking a direction, and keep moving until what? So when would I want this lightning bolt to stop? Well, maybe one of two cases. Um, so the hexagon here is going to want one of these blue pieces. These are the, something might be happening. So one instance where I'd want to stop is if the lightning bolt is touching the bar, because maybe that means something bad happens to me, right? So if I'm touching the paddle, that might be one instance where I want to say stop moving, and maybe I'd want to do something like I lose a life, and also the lightning bolt can go back up to the top and sort of repeat. Now, another moment where I'd like the lightning bolt to go up to the top is when it gets to the bottom, I guess, right? So I might need sort of two possibilities here. So if I have two situations, right, if I want to say keep doing this until what? Well, one thing I could do is I could throw with my operators, I have or as an option. So I could say repeat until, whoops, until you're touching the paddle. That would be one moment where I'd want to say stop doing this. And another moment where I'd want to say stop doing this is if it reaches the bottom. So how do I know if it reaches the bottom? Again, a variety of ways to check that. I could just see if the Y value gets low enough. It's probably the easiest way to do that. So if you remember on the motion, you have X and Y positions, or X or Y coordinates of these guys as options. So I want to maybe check if the Y position basically falls below where the paddle is, which is at about, if you look at this number, it's about 135, or so maybe I'll just do 140 to be on the safe side. Or maybe I'll just do 150 just to make sure I'm covered. This is where you might play around and make sure you get the right thing you want. And I can drop that right in there. So what is it that I'm going to do? I'm going to keep going until the lightning bolt touches the paddle, or it falls too low. And if either of these things is true, I'll add some things to this, but I'm going to go back to the top, pick a new random direction, and keep going. So let's see if this works. Right? So I'm going to keep trying to avoid it for now, right? So when it reaches the bottom, it kind of resets to the top, picks a new random direction, and if it hits the paddle, right, I also send it back. It also gets sent back to the top, right? All right, so I've at least got that sort of thing happening. Now, if I want to say it hitting the paddle results in something bad happening to me, then I might just do a quick check afterwards, after this stops, and say, all right, if I stop doing this, it's because of one of two reasons. Let me stop this whole thing. It could be that it's because I touched the paddle. It could be because the Y position is because it's to the bottom of the screen. So if I want to sort of do a score thing here, that if it hits the paddle, I lose maybe I lose a point, or I could say I lose a life. That's probably more realistic. I can just do one more check here, where I might ask the question. Get rid of that. I don't need that. If it's touching if the reason it stopped is because it's touching the paddle, then here's maybe where I want to lose a life. So I'll grab my data tab. That's where I have my variables, and maybe I should change life by, and now I want to lose a life, so I might say change it by -1. Okay, so let's try that and see if that works. This might be a little glitchy, but let's see if it does the trick. Okay, so I don't lose any lives for that, so that's good, right? But now if it happens to hit the paddle, all right, I think that's pretty good, right? I'm losing a life each time. I realize I'm down to negative lives at this point, but all right, yeah. So that seems pretty good. That's a good obstacle to add, right? This certainly makes level 2, if I'm going to do this on level 2, it certainly makes it harder. So let's try the game again and see if it hopefully all makes sense, and hopefully I didn't mess something up somewhere else. So I still have my intro screen. And let's see, I'm going to start my game. I got no paddle, or no lightning bolts. That's good. The bananas are moving. I collected the bananas, which gives me an extra life. And no lightning yet, but if I go to level 2, okay. So that's a thing that happened. Okay, so, all right, so this seems to be kind of stuck, I guess, up there, right? So I think when I get the level 2 message, I do this, right? Now, when do I get the level 2 message? Well, so, okay, right. So I mean, what was happening to that is that this whole thing, not just this portion and whatnot was repeating, but the whole everything I think was repeating. It was basically saying start over, start over, start over, start over, start over, and so on and so on. Well, where do I give the level 2 message? I think I give the level 2 message from here, which says if the score is more than 4, switch to backdrop 2 and send a level 2 message. Well, the problem is that this is going to continue to send a level 2 message as long as the score is more than 4. So I kind of was a little clumsy, I think, in how I did this last time, or when we were building this up. And to be honest, it didn't really make a difference until now. And this will happen to you too, where some of the stuff you did a little earlier, like, I should have done it in a somewhat more clever way. So the problem is that since the score is more than 4, it keeps saying, I'm ready for level 2, I'm ready for level 2, I'm ready for level 2. And that's okay for a lot of the game, but since the lightning bolt is only going to show up when it gets this level 2 message, it's getting this message like all the time, which means it's going to sort of keep going back all the way to the top of this thing, which is why it's not actually flowing and doing like we thought it would do. Okay, so I think there's an easy way to fix this, which is to say, all right, this isn't quite what I wanted here then. So I think maybe a better thing to do would be to say, all right, if the score is more than 4, I want to do this. I sort of only want to do this once, right? And then I want to sort of stop. So if you go into the control, you have to get a little creative sometimes. This repeat until is actually a good thing. So let me, rather than my forever guy. Forever is sometimes a little dangerous because, well, it means do this forever, which isn't always exactly what you want. So how about if I grab this instead and say, all right, repeat until the score is more than 4. I can grab that guy. Whoops, that didn't quite go in there. I don't really want anything to happen. I just want to sort of get stuck here. And then once the score reaches 4, that's actually kind of when I want to do that stuff. And if I only want to do it once, this is now no longer inside of this loop that's saying do this forever, do this forever, do this forever. So even though it's a little silly to say I'm not actually doing anything in here, this is going to keep repeating until you reach a score of 4, and then it's going to jump out and say, oh, switch, broadcast. Which is actually kind of more of what we wanted. I didn't want to keep rebroadcasting over and over and over again that it's time for level 4, it's time for level 2, it's time for level 2. All right, and while I'm here, I should probably do the same thing for my game over, which is to say, okay, broadcast that once, and then what am I looking for? I'm looking for when your lives reach 0. So repeat until your lives reach 0. When your lives do reach 0, I'm going to jump out of this yellow guy and say, okay, switch to, whoops, get rid of this. Switch to the game over background, broadcast game over, and stop everybody. All right, so this is, to be honest, a cleaner way to do my broadcasting, and I was being a little clumsy with how I was broadcasting earlier, and that didn't really matter until now. But I think I'm hopeful that maybe that'll fix my problem. But let's see. I could be wrong. Um, all right, so I'm playing. I got the bananas. Great. And if I get to level 2, hopefully. Okay, now I think I'm in good shape. Okay. So, and I lose a life. Okay, I lost 2 lives pretty quickly there. One from the lightning bolt and one from the ball, missing the ball. So actually, that was quite difficult to do this board. So anyway, but that's good, right? I mean, your game should sort of be hard at some point, and not that it has to be impossible to beat, but it should at least be somewhat of a challenge. Now, if you kind of said, "Oh gosh, that's too hard," there's little easy things you could do. Maybe you can make the lightning bolt move more slowly, right? If it's moving too fast, change that to 5. That'll make it move a little more slowly. Whatever, right? There's maybe a variety of things you might try to do at this point. I'll say just one last thing. The sort of awkwardness of at the end of the game, remember we made all the other guys disappear. I didn't do that for the lightning bolt, so I should probably do that and be a good person. So let's see. When I receive game over message, hide, right? That's our very easy way of saying don't show, just disappear, and that'll make that lightning bolt not still appear there at the very end. Okay, so that's kind of a good example of motion. Let me just maybe play one more time, make sure that works. Okay, so here we go. Oh, seemingly it's almost impossible not to get the bananas, but I might. Oh, there we go. I got the bananas. And now I'm ready for the lightning bolts, which they're moving more slowly, right? So I kind of probably isn't quite as hard as the other game was, although I still died. So, yeah. So, and you put some sound effects, right? There's probably a really good sound effect for lightning, maybe. Let's see. I don't want to record. So let's see. What kind of sounds lightning-ish? I don't know what a vibraphone is. It's not really that exciting. Synth. Let's see what that is. Oh, that's probably somewhat more lightning-ish. I don't know. Let's see what the difference is. Oh, that's kind of cool too. So if you want to play a sound, you can decide how long you want it to play. I don't know, maybe it takes about, I don't know if beats or seconds, but roughly that. Playing the note is to say which of the tones do you want it to play, so you can get really specific. I don't know if you're very particular about what note you're buzzing along here. That might be a little too long. Maybe I'll go to 1 beat. Okay, so that might be a cute sound effect to add to the lightning bolt as it's drifting. So maybe I'd put that probably. I think I only want to do that once per sort of reload. So maybe I would try it that way. Let's see how this goes. Let me start over again. Got the bananas. Get to level 2. Okay. All right. So that was a little glitchy, I think. It seemed like, let me just see if I can. Okay. So it's not quite doing what I wanted, which was to play this note while the object is descending. Instead, I think it kind of looks like it's playing it before or after it does its thing. So, okay, that's really annoying. So instead, saying, okay, well, then that's not quite the right place for it. Let me pull it out for a minute. And I say, okay, I want it to do this as it's moving. So maybe a better place to do it is in the movement step. And now maybe I don't want it to play it for quite as long. So maybe that's better. Okay, that's definitely worse. Okay, stop. Um, okay, so sound sometimes is a little interesting because it is going to try to do the sound sort of independent. So what was happening there? It was moving 5 steps and then playing the sound and then waiting to come back up here to move rather than sort of just doing them both at the same time, which is kind of more of what I think I wanted to happen. So maybe not the best idea to do that. You can do something to make this happen. You probably just want to maybe use a different control here, and instead of having it sort of embedded in here, maybe you just want to sort of be playing this. You could probably just say do this. Let's see if I put this on a separate on round 2. Maybe I want to say play, play this for a second and maybe keep doing this. And maybe so that it doesn't totally drive us nuts, I'll put sort of a wait here. So play it for a second, wait a second, and then repeat. Play it for a second, wait a second, and then repeat. That might be sort of a more reasonable thing. So that isn't necessarily going to line up perfectly with when do you read, but it kind of, well, anyway, it kind of is sounding the alarm literally to say, these lightning bolts are coming for us. So let's see. I got my thing, got my points. Okay, well that was better, I think, right? The lightning bolt was continuously moving at least. So, well, anyway, you can play around with this and kind of make it do whatever you want it to do. Okay, so that's a reasonable tutorial, I think, in trying to animate an object. You might have things that are coming sort of more left to right rather than top to bottom, like we did here, but the same idea should sort of apply. You don't have to use randomness with this, but you probably want to, at least to a degree, otherwise it'll be sort of predictable. If the lightning bolt was always coming down the middle of the screen, that'd be a little strange, I think. So